Good afternoon. I'm Parisa Naruzzi, and this is Taking Action on WPFW 89.3 FM. We come to you every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, bringing the information and inspiration that you need so that you can take action in our city to fight displacement, save our schools and communities, stand up for justice, build our power, and hold government officials accountable. Taking Action is produced by the grassroots organization Empower DC. We welcome your feedback and show ideas. You can go to empowerdc.org to learn more and to connect with us. We're in our last few days of the Fall Fund Drive. We're raising $350,000 for the operational needs of DC's only people-powered jazz and justice station, WPFW. We appreciate everyone's help in helping the station reach its goals. Keep us on air. I always say every time we have a pledge drive that there's been all too much loss of Black and brown-led institutions in our city, and we cannot afford to lose WPFW, which has been such a great platform for so many of us doing important work in the city. So I encourage you to call in this hour and help us raise $600, which is our goal for Taking Action today. If you call in soon, you may be lucky enough to get one of the last 3 copies of the book Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice by Dr. Jessica Nemhard. We have only 3 copies left, and you can get one for your pledge of $89.30. Thank you so much to Joni Eisenberg for making that available. Today's show is the last of a 3-part series, which Joni organized with some co-producers in honor of National Cooperative Month. And we are exploring successful Black-led cooperative models for building just food systems driven by community. So in just a minute here, I'm going to introduce my 2 guests, but I want to again remind people, if you would like to go ahead and make your pledge or get a copy of Collective Courage, you can call 202-588-9739, or you can go online to WPFWFM.org and hit donate and select Taking Action from the drop-down box. Thank you all so much. I'm honored to have 2 valued guests on the show today to talk about cooperatives and Black food sovereignty. I'm joined today by Dr. Jasmine Jackson, or Dr. Jazz, who is the co-executive director of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. Dr. Jazz is an applied food systems research and policy-based specialist. She partners with academic research teams, anchor institutions, philanthropic foundations, and community-based organizations to identify root causes of and develop innovative solutions to food system challenges. I am also very excited to have Amaha Sellasie joining us. Amaha is the director of the Center for Applied Social Issues and an associate professor of sociology at Sinclair Community College. He is a lifetime community organizer, serves as president of the Gem City Market Board, co-founder of West Dayton Strong, a STEAM-based summer and after-school program in public housing, and co-creator of the Dayton Lab, a community-based participatory research lab and partnership between University of Dayton and Sinclair Community College. Thank you both so much, Amaha and Dr. Jazz. I'm so honored to get to meet you and get to speak to you today.
Yeah, we're honored to be here, Yeah, give thanks. Well, when I heard that song in the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. You know what I mean? I was like, what?
Yes. I am thankful as well. For my house here, I'm definitely also in the right place. So I appreciate the invite and excited to get into the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. And I appreciate again, Joni, for helping to pull this together, and Jules and others who helped to line up everybody to have this conversation, which, yes, it's marking National Cooperative Week, but it's also something that here in DC, we're really challenged by, food insecurity, food justice, food access. It's not an issue that I have worked directly on, but respect and honor many people in our community who have been working hard. Chris Bradshaw, Dreaming Out Loud, who I know is part of your organization, Dr. Jazz, and Gail Taylor from 3-Part Harmony Farm, and so many others. So I would love to, at the end, through the program, get some of your your best practices, advice, and suggestions to learn from you what has worked well in other cities. But let's start with just learning a little bit more about each of you, and whatever you want to share, certainly, but especially if you could give us a hint of what led you to focus on food justice work in particular. Would you like to start, Dr. Jazz?
Sure. I always thought that I'm from New Orleans, the Ninth Ward to be specific. And that's really what's grounded me in my work, just living in the Ninth Ward and witnessing all the vast disparities of just no access and wanting to actually be a part of that solution. So I left New Orleans for a short period of time to go to Alabama, where I studied community planning. And there I realized that it was more about the policy than the plan. So then I went on to Tuskegee University, the illustrious Tuskegee University, to get my PhD in integrative public policy and development. And there I really focused on how local food systems create community and economic development. I've been having my hands in the soil ever since, marrying a 5th-generation farmer from Tuskegee, and now hopefully birthing the 6th generation. So really excited to continue this work, especially with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance and all of our amazing members.
That's an amazing journey. Thank you. And Amaha, share a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm a public sociologist, so I like to walk with the community towards like understanding like what it is that we're experiencing, and then like how we can shift and change within it. And so I was organizing for a while, but I hadn't fully realized that we have 40,000 residents in Dayton with no full service grocery store, because Dayton is a hyper-segregated city. So 98% of African Americans live on the west side, 94% of white live on the east side, with the Turkish, Latino, and African refugee community. And so it was just like the underdevelopment that came from redlining really got me into all my work for real, you know what I mean, of just like how to like build community power. But then like realizing the importance of food as far as like a foundation piece, you know what I mean, of building our liberation, I just started going deeper down the rabbit hole.
Well, I'm excited to hear both of you talk more, and already just I could speak to you forever about the connections around land use, planning, and policy, and community development, which is what you all have really brought together. And I know you also have a mindset, Amaha in particular, around what are the societal shifts and the personal relationships that are underpinning this work. So I want to ask you, Dr. Jazz, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit more about your organization and some of the work that you're doing, some of the projects and some of the strategies that you all are using.
Yeah, so the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, I'll continue to refer to it as the Alliance. We really understand our work would not be possible with all of the cooperative models that have been before us, like the Black resilient farming communities, specifically the Black power movements in the 60s. But we just live on a legacy of Black people who've been audacious enough to confront violence with organization. And that's what we continue to do. Like, we're breathing life into new movements, and then just realizing that our work intersects in so many levels. So we're focusing on the food system and the lands piece, and knowing that we're a coalition of over 50 now, almost 60 Black-led organizations, and we're representing hundreds of urban and rural farmers, some organizers, definitely land stewards, and they're just based nationwide. And we're really intentionally intergenerational as well. And we continue to connect that urban and rural movement by just mapping it. We have a Black food map. We assess things with our self-determining food economies and supply chain work. And then we're training and deepening the organizing through our land stewardship trainings and our resource commons, where we're actually funding that training and ensuring that people have the infrastructure needed. So I would say our core goals are to build that food sovereignty and land justice. And we really do it by organizing people and building institutions and amplifying culture. So I'm excited to continue to launch more projects. We've been working together as co-ops. I just left Minneapolis with lots of people in the Up and Coming conference. We led the 3rd annual Black-led Day, brings together over 100 Black-led cooperatives. And then also just recently leaving the Black Urban Growers Conference in Philadelphia, like literally a day or two ago. So I'm sorry, I'm a little winded, but yeah, we are continuing to organize and strategize collectively on what we can do specifically in our regions, but to continue to connect this work together.
That is so powerful. And, I just recently got to attend the award ceremony for the Cooperative Hall of Fame. And it sounds like you all really need to be, up there nominated and receiving that award. My co-founder of Empower DC, Linda Leaks, was inducted into the Co-op Hall of Fame. So we talked about her a couple of weeks ago for her work around housing cooperatives in particular. But can you talk, Dr. Jazz, give us just a little bit more 101 sort of background on the issue of Black land loss that you all are confronting and the racism within agricultural policy and how it's affected the conditions that you are now seeking to repair?
Yeah. Somewhere between 15 to 19 million acres have been stolen from Black people. And I say stolen in a way that has been taken away through systems, through the USDA and other lending institutions that have targeted specifically Black institutions and ownership to strip that away from them. So we've been working to reverse that, to mitigate that harm. We know that it's deep and there won't be dollars that can return that. So what we're actually looking to do is reclaim that stewardship of that land, to remove it from the speculative market. And so it won't be further bartered or sold, but forever stewarded by Black people. And we're doing that through our Resource Commons Council. I mentioned that earlier. Our Resource Commons is actually led and governed by elected members of our organization. And we just recently launched our first round of funding, which was over $750,000 directly into infrastructure, land acquisition and resources to ensure that we're starting to move that needle back to where it needs to be. So honestly, it's been ingrained in lots of policies, and we have been big advocates for a transformative farm bill. So you'll see more of that coming out, where we have already listed a plethora of demands on how this could be a better farm bill, specifically including the Justice for Black Farmers Act, which some of our members helped to draft that legislation with Senator Booker and Warnock. So we're really looking to continue to advocate. If it's not in the farm bill, somehow, some way, we'll get it on a state or local level, some of that reclamation for the land.
Seeing again more parallels, here in DC, it's an urban environment. There's, I'm sure, a history of land loss on in an agricultural sense, but certainly in just Black land ownership in general, and homeowners, land that was residential or other business land. And our work in Berry Farm has worked to document and seek justice and repair of the land that was stolen from the original owners, which was the first Black homeownership community in DC. So thank you so much for, really raising that issue and finding solutions. Amaha, I was really excited to speak to you as well because of this strong just love that emanates from you. Whenever I got to listen to some of the podcasts and read your writings, and you stated on your website that your overall goal is to support humanity's shift in this hour, building capacity for future cooperation and collaboration. And I love that. And I wanted to see if you could give us a little bit of a sense of how you're approaching that idea of building that capacity for cooperation and collaboration.
Yeah, sure. First, I wanted to shout out that I'm a proud member of the Alliance, and I love to see the work that is happening. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed before, like literally. I think I think that capacity for cooperation is already inherent within inside of us, right? And so, but I think it's how we're seeing each other, and so it seems like in this hour, there's a huge shift between, King will call it chaos or community. You know what I mean? Like we have to choose, like, what is this future that we're going to step into, and so to me, like part of it is really just understanding that Ubuntu, or that I am because you are, that my humanity is known in the presence of your humanity. And like, I know that sounds like a great phrase and it sounds cool, but it really is the architecture of reality, and it's like, oftentimes we think, we've been brought up to think that independence is like what is natural and then everything else is foreign, but it's actually the opposite, you know what I mean? And so my goal is to help us to see us as we are, that we can then, continue to grow, you know what I mean? And not even just, as far as humans are connected, but our relationship with the land, you know what I mean? And everything that we can move forward and release the gifts and talents in the community. Because I think ultimately we have to make the social choice that like once we know we have a shared future, it's like, okay, so now that we know that we're a single garment of destiny, like King would call it, you know what I mean? Then like, how are we going to step into the center of the circle? You know, because like all the gifts that we have on the earth and all the gifts we have in our community, they lay dormant oftentimes because of maybe fear or lack of trust or even like trying to outshine each other instead of realizing that our gifts are for each other and that we bring our gifts together. We create social power or like a social force or like a wind, you know what I mean, that can propel us towards whatever that future is that we're walking towards, you know what I mean? And so to me, it's like, how do we just help the community to realize its gifts and talents, you know, and human dignity, right? And ground all this work in fundamental human dignity that can't be given or taken away. You know what I mean? It is.
Mm. Thank you for saying that so eloquently. I think that I agree with you wholeheartedly, and also know this is really at the heart of our ability to overcome the struggles that we face as a society. Can we still 100%. Build trust? Can we still support one another? Can we foster that dignity that every living being on the earth deserves, that freedom from harm and that, respect for their life? If you could talk about the Gem City Market, which is cooperative grocery market you talked about a little bit earlier, and how does that market serve as a model for some of the community power building? How have you infused this work around cooperative identity and shared work into your work with an actual physical market?
Yeah, I think the market is a combination of a community, realizing its ability to self-determine, like oftentimes in areas that's been underdeveloped. I like to say that we've been overpromised and underdelivered, which leaves us in this state of like trauma and disbelief and sometimes like acceptance, you know what I mean? Like accepting things as they are instead of like Angela Davis says, like knowing that we can change what is now, And so we built a grocery store, 15,000 square foot, 8,000 retail that has a health clinic, community kitchen, and a community room, to increase access to fresh fruits and vegetables, right? Because we're living in food apartheid. So food apartheid, you know what I mean? Like one of our first things we did was we changed the language, because at the time people were saying food deserts, you know what I mean? But a desert, as Karen Washington so eloquently says, right, implies a natural phenomenon. But we wanted the community to know that this was someone's imagination, you know what I mean? Like if they imagined this, it's acceptable for the Black community, right? And then from that standpoint, we can know that if it was imagined, we can reimagine it, right? And so, because I think part of the challenge is like, how do we emerge hope in the community? Because the more hopeful I am, knowing that I have the power, or we have the power to transform our lived environment, the more we're willing to put our gifts into the center of the circle. You know what I mean? And so like, what is that thing that's hindering us from putting our gifts fully in? Part of it's hope, part of it's trust, right? And so what we did was we started a process to move like recipients to co-creators, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing that like we are the ones we've been waiting for, and that we do have the power to change our lived environment. So throughout the whole process, we were very, very participatory, right? If it was naming the market, if it was our mission statement, we had about 200 people in a church basement working on our mission statement. If it was architectural design, throughout the process, it was just all about participation and deep listening. You know what I mean? Because we wanted the community to know that we have the knowledge and the wisdom and the expertise to make this happen, and that we can co-create this together instead of just receiving. You know what I mean? Like, how do you walk with instead of just doing for or just like receiving something else, you know what I mean? Because like that ownership is something, you know what I mean? And so like I look at cooperation in general as like a moral force for human development, and like how can the Gem City Market be a catalyst for a more beloved community? Because people on the east side came and helped us organize, you know what I mean? Like it was a way of like healing these historical wounds, right? As we were meeting a need, you know what I mean? Because at the time that we opened, we were second in the nation for food insecurity, and so we're still learning and growing, And like, how do we increase this notion of like ownership? You know what I mean? That like, yo, like we own this market is going to be what we want it to be, right? And so like, how do we position the market so that it reflects the aspirations of the community? You know what I mean? That there's no, at least amount of distinction as possible between the two. You know what I mean? That like we're truly like building community power.
Mm. Again, so inspirational. I mean, there's so many gems in what you're saying. And I'm sure that this model of having a market that also has a health clinic and a community meeting room, I mean, that I'm sure came out of the community's genius of being able to be co-creators and co-visionaries in this process, because it's not every market, right, that has that. So that must have come from.
Yeah, but it's interesting, right? Is that like part of how we got to the health clinic was because they closed the hospital down the street from us. You know what I mean? Gosh. And so like part of it was like responding to what it was and identifying our needs. And I want to give a shout out to Bob and Ed and everybody at Renaissance, right? Because like what Dr. Jazz is talking about, what I've been talking about is like this fourth wave that's moving in the community that Dr. Jessica so clearly states, right? Of like Black liberation and Black community development towards self-determination, Mm-hmm. And when it comes to markets, Renaissance was like our key. Like they taught us like how to organize and like the things that we needed to do for the Gem City market to even exist. You know what I mean? So I want to shout out the lineage, you know what I mean, that we're recipients of,
That's great. And that's a great segue as well, because as you mentioned, I mean, these tools are not new, right? These cooperative economics, community development, these are tools that have been around, and it's another approach to solving really all of the challenges that our cities, typically say that they're trying to solve when they promote this, more capitalist trickle down economic development that doesn't work. So I wonder if you could share a little bit, maybe Dr. Jazz, you could start, how have cooperatives especially played a role historically in Black land sovereignty, and what role might they play in the future? What are the ways that you're developing that into your model for the future?
Yeah, honestly, it's so hard to follow Amaha, just always dropping the wisdom, and the work that y'all are doing in Dayton is amazing. And I know it's vibrating throughout Ohio and the nation. So just knowing the shoulders that we stand on. Earlier when we were joining the call, I heard that you all are giving away Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nimhard's book, Collective Courage. That is the key to the historical foundation. She's done so much research and uplifted how the history of co-ops are Black. It's Black, period. Mm-hmm. No point. There's no way around it. It's not new for us. It's like newer to others. And like we're reintroducing this to our neighborhoods and communities, but they have historically been a vital part of Black communities, not just from getting us food, but from funeral burials, from college and childcare, and just the ways that we cared for each other has been in a cooperative way since our existence. So we've been addressing these market failures, the hospitals leaving, the grocery stores pulling out, all the economic discrimination, period, the highways being built through our communities. This has been providing us economic interdependence with cooperatives and how we build them together. So I'm really excited how our future is going to continue that, shifting that narrative, especially with the market studies, and how I'll get to that sure in a minute, mm-hmm. but I want to know how we're empowering ourselves. It's not like we need someone to do this for mm-hmm. us. Like Amaha says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So we are building the cooperatives to gain control over our systems and eventually achieve the sovereignty.
Mm. Yeah.
There's something that Dr. Jazz says so eloquently, and I'm about how cooperation is like our ancient technology. And like I ponder that every day, and I really like sit inside of that, right? Because sometimes we see cooperation as just a thing, but like no, it actually is a tool, and it was a way that we built these deep relationships, right? If we're going to be relational instead of transactional, that we know that movements move at the speed of trust, and we need depth over speed, all of these things, right? Then it's like that notion of cooperation is so important, because like Dr. Jessica clearly states that in our history, the freedom movement had social transformation and economic development working hand in hand, right? And that's what moved us closer to liberation, you know what I mean? But like over time, it got separated. And there's even a time when I was like all just on the community side, like, man, I don't want to do no economy stuff, you know what I mean? And then I started realizing that it's like, yo, once we have our collective hope, you know what I mean? What is that thing that we're pressing for? What is that thing that's so compelling, that so has such a rich fragrance that I'm willing to put my gifts into the center? You know, I'm inspired to do that, right? So like as we're developing that vision and we're walking towards it, you know, you make the road by walking it. What is that economic driver behind it that is like helping push us and propel us into that? You know what I mean? And that's where cooperatives come in, you know. So like in Dayton, you know, we have the market, but you know, we're also part of, you know, Co-op Dayton. And so Co-op Dayton, we have a doula co-op, we have a maker space, we have a farm that's coming up, you know. And so it's like how we build a cooperative ecosystem, you know what I mean? And really, like Dr. Jess said, shift the narrative, right? And cause all this work is Afrofuturism, you know what I mean? Like we are building our Black future by our action and learning. You know what I mean? Like that's the key thing, I think, is like we're learning from each other. We're sharing notes. You know what I mean? That's why I think shows like this is so important. So we can learn what DC is doing. We can learn what New Orleans and Dayton and Detroit, you know what I mean? That we're developing our collective intelligence, you know what I mean? Because all these pieces are coming together on a national level through the work that's being done on the ground throughout the country.
Thank you so much. I want to pause for just a minute to remind our listeners that we are raising money for WPFW. Not exactly a cooperative, but still people powered and something that we rely on to serve as a platform to get us the news and information that we need to do important work in our city. And of course, just the music that we enjoy as well. So our goal this hour is $600. And folks can help us reach that goal by pledging you could donate via Cash App to $WPFW. You can go online to WPFWFM.org, or you can call 202-588-9739. Sorry, 202-588-9739. I don't think we have any pledges yet. So folks, I hope you'll help us reach our goal this hour. And so that
WPFW, I'm doing it right now.
Thank you so much.
Like,
yes. So
look, that song in the beginning won me over. I'm telling you, man.
Okay. Well, tell my co-producer Daniel Del Pialago, he's a musicologist and helped choose that song. So I appreciate that very much. But thank you. And yes, we still have those 3 copies of Jessica Nemhard's book, Collective Courage. So grab you one of those with your donation of $89.30. Okay, so we were talking about a little bit of the history of cooperatives, and you were, you know, really explaining how this is a part of our humanity. Really, it's something that is ancient in our, you know, in our bones, in our blood, and it's also strategic, and it's in an important. You called it an ancient technology that I like to. I like the way that helps us realize that, you know, these are skills and tools, just like any other technology that can be employed for the betterment of society, right? I wonder if you could talk a little bit more, Amaha, about just, you know, I guess when you were talking, I started to think, well, like a chicken and the egg, what comes first? Do you have to build the trust to do the cooperative work, or do you build the cooperative in order to build the trust? I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a dance, right? And so I would say it's like it's a both and, you know, yeah. Because I think, like, you know, we have to act to learn, and we have to learn to act, you know. And so it's like as we are stepping out and acting, we are learning and we're growing closer together. But I do think I would probably say the relational piece first. And the reason why, I think sometimes we're so quick to move to action that, you know, like we'll meet on Monday and say, hey, we need to do this. And by Wednesday, we've broken up into committees and all this stuff, but we haven't built those deep relationships first, right? Because, you know, movements move at the speed of trust, right? And so, like, if the bridge is fragile, then when outside forces comes, it dissipates. And then, you know, 5 months later, someone will say, remember that group we had? Let's try to pull that together. And we go through these cycles because we didn't spend time first building these deep relationships that are so strong, the connections that can withstand any obstacle that comes in our way. And part of that is like the more we know the vision. And some of the Dr. Jessica, I asked her a question about like, you know, how do we move into like a knowing? And she said like it's a transition from aspiration to acceptance. And that's another thing that I ponder every day, right? Because like I think we need to know the time that is now. You know what I mean? Like know that we know that we know. Know it so much that our actions declare it. You know what I mean? It's not just by word, but by demonstration. You know what I mean? That we know what time it is, and in knowing the time, then rearranges how we see ourselves and see each other. You know what I mean? As we're building these deeper relationships, right? And then allowing that to then bring out our gifts in different ways to come together, right? Because ultimately, it's like the community has the power and it has the resources, but it's our lack of relationship. You know what I mean? That hinders us from being able to fully be who we actually can be. You know what I mean? And so that's why I think like the choice is ours. So there's nobody hindering us from moving more deeply in the community than ourselves. You know what I mean? And so it's like, man, like I'm just trying to learn how to be more cooperatable because I'm an organizer. So I used to be out and try to do everything. But now I'm just like, man, when I'm in the room, how am I hindering cooperation? You know what I mean? Because I can work on that part if I'm trying to be a thermostat and not thermometer. You know what I mean? So like I can work on like how I show up, you know what I mean? In a way that's most conducive to cooperation. You know what I mean? And the more that I think we're striving to do that, the more things flow. So I definitely think it's a dance, but I would emphasize the relation piece first, for sure.
Mm. And that's so, and I think it's hard, right? Because the situation is urgent. We feel this sense of urgency, like we have to, you know, but you're right that, you know, we shoot ourselves in the foot, right? If we don't do the work of building the relationships that sustain the movement, whatever it is, over long term. I wonder, Dr. Jazz, how have you all addressed that tension between, you know, the urgency to get things done and the need to go slow enough to build trust, build deep relationships within your work?
Yeah, definitely re-examining timelines and understanding that we have our own deadlines and we can set our own pace. So I know I mentioned earlier the up and coming conference, but I believe it was about 3 or 4 years ago, right before we had the Black-led Day, that we wanted to continue to stay in touch and build those relationships and also learn together. So actually today at 4 p.m. Eastern, we have an open call. You do not have to be a member of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, but we continue to hold space for Black-led cooperatives to learn and dream together. Like that's where the market study has been born out of, which I'll share more about what our barriers and challenges are. But it's honestly been a consistent space that we have every month, that we know that we'll see other people that are in this work together and not be discouraged and know that there is a movement happening, because it is.
Oh, that's wonderful. So yeah, let's talk about the study and some of the challenges or barriers that are facing, you know, the cooperatives and the folks within your network, and how you've gone about addressing those challenges.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for the members of the Alliance as they've been uplifting the challenges that they see specifically around market studies. And when I say market studies, this is a research document that a lot of grocery stores, specifically led cooperatives, need to present to funders and outside people who are interested in investing and knowing that this is true. Even city government looks at this market study to say, is this a viable product or project? So right now, the way that market studies are set up, it is based on a lot of the census data, which may not always tell the narrative that we know is true in Black neighborhoods, that we may not have the highest income, but we do feed ourselves. We do still pay for food on higher bases and higher percentages than people expect or anticipate, just because of the ways that our priorities are. So the narrative now that we are trying to shift is that we need more culturally relevant market studies that are actually taken into our principles and meeting our communities where they are, and not just put in this blanket push and plug, template on top to say, well, if you don't have this number of people in the community, if you don't have this level of income and you're not meeting this retail threshold, like we haven't been given an opportunity if there hasn't been a grocery store there in 50 years. So how are you, building that narrative? So we're really excited. We actually recently launched, thanks so much to Little Africa Food Co-op, Angela Sales, who led our research work, which is also a member of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, with over 50 cooperators weighing in, interviewing, surveying, and talking to even finance and funders and people on how to actually shift this narrative. So you can find that research report, the Rethinking Market Studies report, as Brother Amaha said. This all has been imagined. So we're looking to reimagine this process together.
That's right. And, I think one of the key things that Dr. Daz is hitting on is that, like, traditional co-ops were like in college towns, and like they had different wants and needs when it comes to like in white America when it comes to food co-ops. And so like there's a logic that works in that context that like was like automatically assumed to be what it needs to be in a Black community. But like our context is completely different. And like we're seeing it more and more. So even like there was this wisdom that said that like, the Black community doesn't want the fresh and the meat. They just want like the middle aisle stuff, like the box and the can stuff, you know what I mean? And so like, but we have found that the more we put in our produce and our meat, like we went from like no butcher to having like 3 butchers now. Shout out to Adrian, who's like our community butcher, who is like gangster OG, and it's like the more we put money into that, the more successful we become. So like we're literally challenging the dominant narrative. And it's interesting because like they're basing it off of we didn't have it before. And so like they're basing it off of Family Dollars and stuff like that. Well, no, the reason why we're doing this is because we're trying to get fresh, right? And so like it's really reimagining the underlying assumptions and like developing our own thing, like who we see as having assets and having value. You know what I mean? Like we can't use a white lens to tell us the value in our community. You know what I mean? And how our community works, right? And so we're in the process now of like developing our praxis and like learning and really understanding like how this works in our communities, because every community that's been redlined is going to have a food apartheid, right? And it's synonymous. It's the canary in the coal mine. You know what I mean? Like every community has that. And even the fact that you have food insecurity means that you're going to have higher levels of mass incarceration, higher infant mortality. All this web comes. You know what I mean? But like one of the easiest ways to pinpoint it, I think, is the food insecurity.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, the reminder that, part of the unjust systems that have developed are the measurement tools, the things that we're told you have to have this business plan and this market share and this, and all of these tools, like you said, from the white capitalist lens that are not meant to serve the communities that we're serving. They actually were used as a tool to destroy or to erode the gains of Black and brown communities. So important that reimagining and those tools that you all are creating. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of examples of things that have worked well in other places that we might emulate here in DC. And I mentioned, I'm not super involved in food security issues, although we have a site in the Ivy City neighborhood where we do provide meals and have a small food pantry. We did some emergency food distribution during the COVID pandemic. And we do in our city have a really beautifully growing Black-led urban farming food access movement. And, again, shout out to Dreaming Out Loud and 3-Part Harmony and others who have been, really holding down that work here. But we've struggled as well with the city government's policy around, markets being so, dependent on and just stuck on, we're going to attract a big box retailer, the major market, and we're going to do it at all costs, but it really just comes after gentrification, right? So like, we're not going to create a community owned or community driven solution to the current need. We're going to gentrify, bring in white people, and then attract a big grocer. And so we have big swaths of the city that are, terribly underserved, in particular, Southeast DC. And there has been, I think, over the last few years, a grassroots movement attempt to try to build a community-controlled grocery store. And I understand that there's been some challenges. And unfortunately hasn't happened yet. So I wonder, what strategic advice would you offer to organizers and community members here to combat, whether it's to form a strong enough organization to create this, or to combat those policies that the city has that are, really devoid of even considering a grassroots cooperative solution to the food justice problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it starts by getting like the voice of the community in the room that is visible. You know what I mean? That we can hear like what is the shared experience. You know what I mean? Like in Dayton, we had to take if you didn't have transportation, you had to take 2 buses to get to the grocery store. So that was like a 3-hour journey altogether, you know what I mean? Just in transportation to get groceries, And I think from there, like determining what is possible, and seeing like do you want a grocery store? You know what I mean? Like we went to the community, we went to barbershops, beauty salons, we went to bus stations, and we did a survey to see like do you want a grocery store? And if they do, then you start organizing. And I highly suggest, we did not do this, but I wish we had, is shout out to Queen's mother, that they're doing this approach, is I would have built a buyers club first. The reason why, it's a smaller lift, and it may seem like, so we were like, oh, we don't have capacity to do both at the same time, so we're just going to build the market, right? But like the fallacy in that is that what you really want to build long-term wise is you want to build new habits and an orientation of people that are shopping and buying their food together, so that when you open the store, you already have this culture and this habit, and you're just putting it in this location, you build it up. But like when we opened, people were shopping everywhere, and then had to like change to come to the market, and that's a harder turn, and I mean, even for those that support the market and this, that, and the other. So I would suggest doing some type of buyers club, or some kind of way that you're building culture, and know that, like, some places take longer than others, but just keep walking it out. You know what I mean? Like FCI, Food Co-op Initiative, has a lot of good resources on how to build co-ops. You know what I mean? And I was just building that group of people and identifying other, like, I'm just real big on so we have a saying in Dayton that says, "It's more than market, it's a movement," right? And that's because we didn't see the market as the end all to be all. It was like the market is like a piece in a larger strategy towards community transformation. You know what I mean? So like how you're building, broad scale collaboration in the city, identifying a shared need, you know what I mean? But and how that supports all the other great work that's happening, you know what I mean? That you're building out your ecosystem, you know what I mean? That can then be used for other things as well.
Those were all such great words of wisdom. Dr. Jazz, I'd love to get your feedback as well.
Yeah, definitely the building the community here in Amaha. And I know we kept mentioning food apartheid earlier. I want to be really clear. We do have to shift that narrative first in our mindset, because food apartheid is just much more accurate term of where we are. And I really want to share the definition that's been offered to us by one of the Alliance's co-founders and former executive director, Dara Cooper. And you can also find this in our Black food glossary as well on our website. But food apartheid, we define it as a systemic destruction of Black self-determination to control our food, including land, resource theft, and discrimination, a hypersaturation of destructive foods and predatory marketing, and a blatantly discriminatory corporate-controlled food system that results in our community suffering from some of the highest rates of heart disease and diabetes of all times. And of course, many use the term food deserts, but however, food apartheid is much more accurate representation of the structural racialized inequities that perpetuate through our current system. So I'm just naming, and when we sit into that definition and shift our narrative to realize where we are, and this is not just, by happenstance, this is truly purposeful, so we can really build it into our purpose to change that. So I would say keep organizing. One of the I always uplift my mentor, Baba Malik Yakini in Detroit People's Food Co-op. They've been organizing for over a decade, but that store is up, baby, and it will be open next year. Like, I can't wait to visit in the spring. Like, the dreams are like realized. They have been in the minds of each other. There's also a urban farm, D-Town Farms. There's also land trust and the Black Farmer Land Fund in Detroit. There's so many different pieces that are working together with Detroit People's Food Co-op, specifically Detroit Black People's Community Food Security Network. There's so many names, but the top, organization umbrella where they are building it together. And it's like, no, it's not just a store. We are building community and what we need. So also including that civic engagement piece as well. So there's so many different policies that are currently barriers as well that we have to be getting into with our Food Policy Action Council. So there's the Detroit People's Food Policy Council, so there's so many different layers that we can work together to be sure that this market is a success and not just a store that's shown off for a few years and then goes away. This is something that needs to sustain our community throughout some time.
Thank you. Yeah. And that gets into, what I was going to ask you about projects that are taking place anywhere in the world that inspire you. And you started to name, a lot of that great work in Detroit in particular. Amaha, is there any other, things that you've been keeping an eye on that have inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, the Detroit, most definitely, I like what Black Yield Institute is doing and Cooperation Jackson, Industrial Commons, Madrigon. I had a chance to visit there recently. We kind of graphed our things off of Madrigon. And so, and there's plenty more. I know down Atlanta, down New Orleans, right? It's like so much is happening, I know what I'm about to say sounds heady, but it's like, it's because it's so like, foundational that it seems natural, but it's not, is that changing of the language, because language precedes transformation, right? And it's like, when we understand the context that we are living in, then that compels us to act, but if we have a false understanding of like how these things got to be, then it's like, it can lull us into a different type of action. So I think like situating ourselves in the context is like critical to spawn action. And like our secret sauce, I mean, I call it participation, but it's really co-creation. Knowing that like, man, we gotta do this together. You know what I mean? Because the more we do it together, the more we have ownership together. You know what I mean? The more I feel like yeah, I'm actually changing my lived environment, and then that was what inspires me to stay at it. You know what I mean? Through the ups and the downs, through the valleys. You know what I mean? Like one of my elders, he said that some people are gonna come and go, but like you get that core little group. You know what I mean? 5 people, 6 people that you just gonna walk this thing out. You know what I mean? And receive people when they come, and receive them when they go, and receive them when they come back. But having that small group that's gonna walk this out inch by inch. You know what I mean? Is critical. Like Dr. Jess said, you know what I mean? Like, man, like what they're doing in Detroit is like unfathomable. I mean, like it is a whole next thing for real.
I appreciate what you were saying about changing the language and the message that the community is getting about why do these conditions exist. Right now, I would say in DC, the message we get is, this neighborhood is not investable. Like, folks can't make enough money there. And so it's not possible until the neighborhood is gentrified to have these things. So that it leads some people to be, swayed into this position of wanting gentrification so that they can have a grocery store. And it's, of course that, comes with it, probably their ultimate displacement from their own community. The other side is that right now there's the threats of closing what little grocery stores exist because they're blaming it on theft. I don't even know how much of that is, the theft that they've claimed is true or not. I certainly don't know that it's affected the store's bottom line that much. They haven't showed us the books. But what I find very interesting about it is, again, blaming the community and saying, well, threatening to take away what little service they have, and so the whole relationship is very toxic,
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of work
And that's a narrative too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why, like, I know it sounds super heady, you know what I mean? But it's like, man, it's like these ideas shape how we see each other, and like you can't, like, your thinking informs your action, you know what I mean? And your action actually declare your thinking. That's why, you said faith without works, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's really knowing that, like, man, like there's these narratives that like try to get us to accept the unacceptable, and the more that a community realizes, man, that we can rise up and practice more self-control. I mean, community control, you know what I mean? And self-determination,
Absolutely. So we just have a couple minutes left. I want to remind the listeners that you can help us reach $600 goal this hour by calling 202-588-9739, going online to WPFWFM.org, or doing Cash App to $WPFW. I don't know. I think we have at least one donation from Amaha, and Empower DC will donate this hour as well. But I hope some of the listeners, I'm sure they've been glued to what you all have been saying, because this has been a powerful conversation. And I wish, I hope we can continue it and tap into your expertise again here on the local level. Just in our last couple of minutes, if you could share with the listeners how to follow and support your work, we'd greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. The National Black Food and Justice Alliance, you can find us at blackfoodjustice.org online, and all of our social media platforms are Black Food Justice. But I definitely encourage you to check out our Black Food Glossary, which is on our website. And then also add yourself to our Black Food Map. If you're a farmer, a co-op, or an organization that's in Black neighborhoods that's supporting Black food justice, please be sure to self-select and, upload your information there. And then support Black-led organizations. So Amaha and all of our amazing members, it is Cooperative Month. So we are highlighting Black-led co-ops and definitely encouraging you to support them directly, because that's how we move together.
Beautiful. Thank you. Amaha.
Yeah. Well, there's, I think it's like gemcitymarket.org if you want to learn more about the market. And, we're willing to talk if people want to learn. Like, I mean, we feel that, like, whatever knowledge that we've been given, we have responsibility to pass it on to other communities that, you might make a different mistake, but you're not going to make our mistakes. You know what I mean? So we're going to share our wisdom, and then Co-op Dayton. And I would just co-sign, like really checking out the Alliance, you know what I mean? Because, like, so much work is happening there. And then there's also the National Association of Black Cooperators, that, like, cooperators across the country are coming together. There's a Collective Courage Fund, so that, like, if you're doing food work in general right now, like, there's a grant. It came out last week, didn't it, Dr. Jazz, or like 2 weeks ago? Like yeah. there's a grant possibility right now for Black co-ops.
Yes, and any
please.
Black-led organizations as well. We have our MARC, our Mutual Aid Resource Capacity Grant out as well, yes, from the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. So you'll see that on our social media and our website. But I am also a part of the Collective Courage Fund with Amaha, so that general operating funds is available. We earlier had a couple rounds of funding for civic engagement and electoral justice, but this one is for general operating funds. So I do encourage you to check it out. There's some informational sessions coming up for both of those applications. So don't feel like you have to be blind filling it out, and always feel free to reach out to us. We're info@blackfoodjustice.org.
I want to thank you both so much for the powerful work that you do, for spending this hour with us, for allowing me to, talk to you and get inspired by everything that you've said and done, and appreciate you so much. Thanks again for being guests on Taking Action, and welcome you back anytime. To the listeners, please do what you can to keep the station afloat. Donate when you're able. Stay tuned for COVID, Race, and Democracy, but first, the news.